Hello, lovely podcast people. This week's episode, is another guest interview. So I am interviewed by Steven Cuthbert on his podcast Strength Chat, and it's literally a podcast that has everything. It's got a little bit about me, some career stuff, some wisdom stuff, even a little bit of business stuff, and then we go into all manner of nutrition topics. So yeah, it's a really, really wide-ranging podcast. I really hope you enjoy it. Again, if you want to have a look in the show notes at the time point, so you can, if you are short of time. I know lots of you listening listen to the podcast during steps and walks and workouts and whatever. So, as I always get told, the longer the better. And I consistently disappoint with my podcast length. And so here you go. This is a nice long one. That's what she said. I've gone off on one now, haven't I? But talking about normal eating, what is normal eating? It's an interesting one. It's a really interesting terminology, normal eating, and what you think it is. Talking about some rapid fat loss stuff, which I know you guys are always interested in hearing more about. But yeah, I cover lots of different topics here. I hope it's some easy listening and you enjoy it. And without further ado, I will leave you with that podcast. Much love.
Hello and welcome back for another Strength Chat podcast. Today I have got a very special guest for you. Today I'm joined by the CEO and founder of the Mac Nutrition Collective. He loves nutrition. He's been educating others about nutrition through his social media and public speaking. He's also an absolutely really cool guy. Today I am joined by the one and only Martin McDonald. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for such a nice introduction. I've started saying this much more, but I love just sitting and listening, because you just don't know what people are going to say, what they're going to pick up on. So yeah, thanks for the nice introduction.
No worries at all. I like to, I'm sure as we get into a couple of topics and start chatting a little bit more, I like to try and keep the introduction as brief and just tease people about who's on, and then we can dive in a little bit more. How have you been? How are you getting on with everything? What's it been like rather than you hosting a podcast? What's it like you being the guest on a podcast?
Yeah, I suppose actually I'm more experienced as a guest than I am actually as a podcast host. My podcast, I only started in December, I think, so 3 months ago. And my podcast's not as good as anyone else's. It's just, if you've listened to an episode, I'm just chatting really. So people like it. I think it offers something different. And I did say that the reason I waited so long because I wanted to offer something different, and kind of even chatting to you off air, it's you have in mind what the kind of feel you want for things. It's nice when someone knows what they're bringing to the table rather than just, I'm just going to do a podcast. And I had a podcast back in 2014, 15, 16 or something or other, but I co-hosted it with a dietitian, and because it wasn't mine, I'm a bit of a control freak, so I couldn't give it my all. And so it ended up fizzling out. Yeah. But I've really enjoyed doing a podcast. I much prefer being a guest with people like you who you have something you want to chat about. This is kind of like a social occasion for me, especially during the pandemic. I think it's more so during the pandemic, but in real life, like I work a lot. I don't have a great social life when I'm not touring, doing public speaking, that kind of stuff, which is probably funny because people have started saying, "Oh, you're like the Van Wilder of the nutrition world." It's just because it's like all they see is like partying on my stories, and I'm like, that's the 50. You literally have only the 15 times I went out for drinks in my in that year. You saw them on my story. It's like these people probably go out every week, every Friday night, every weekend, or every other weekend, or once a month. I'm like, yeah. so it's nice having a chat with someone who, you know, who's interested in stuff, and also makes me feel interesting because you'll ask me questions that I can answer. So yeah, no.
And how have you been getting on with lockdown? You know, have you had a chance to work on some other projects, or how are you getting on? You know, just in general life, because I've know, you know, from having check-ins with my own clients, and obviously with the gyms closed, it's quite it can be quite a tough time for a lot of people. So how are you finding it and getting on with it from a work and just a normal life side of things?
Yeah, so it's funny actually, because I mean, I was actually asked to do a call with a mental health charity about lots of this stuff. It was to do with loneliness, and I've spoken about earlier in my career where I went through a period of loneliness, a kind of severe loneliness, I'll call it, but just a loneliness that really affected me. And I think a lot of people now, being a mentor to, you know, several hundred fitness professionals through our mentoring program and all of our students, I end up talking to so many people, and everyone shares a similar experience one time or another, and people feel it to a different degree, because when you work from home, or you are self-employed, or you're not an employee in an office and this, that and the other, you know, even if you're sat in coffee shops, it can feel lonely, and some of those deeper connections or chats don't happen. So, you know, talking to people about that, and realizing that it's such a widespread thing in our industry for people. Yeah. But then, what are we on now? Lockdown 3. It's each one's kind of been a little bit different for everyone. And I know I'm in a very, very fortunate position. My staff team, we literally log on to Zoom in the morning, and we create breakout rooms, and people can go in for their different meetings, and when we're all just working, we just have it muted. But if you are, you know, I try, and I've actually got a really cool interview for some big online news outlet. I can't remember their name, I think they're American, but I'm being interviewed on 5 things to be a great leader during turbulent times, or something like that. They're doing an interview with me, and so it's quite an honor. And so some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about there is like turning up, and I'll try and bring a bit of lightheartedness. I don't know if you've seen in my Instagram stories, but just like play a YouTube video as I log on. Like there's this little one with this toddler, and he's like, "Hi, morning, good morning," and it's just funny, you know. So I'm lucky in that sense that even though people have gone to remote working, we still get to chat, and you know, people are in for filming days to set up. We re-recorded an M&U lecture recently, so Billy was in, who's obviously one of my sort of senior members of staff, but also, you know, a really good friend. So he's in setting up the filming room and stuff. So it's good to chat. So I don't know. I'm doing okay. I did a post actually on Instagram saying, there was that point, I think in lockdown 1.0, I was great. I'm an extrovert. I love being around people. I feed off people. Yeah. And I thought, this is going to kill me. And then the first lockdown, I sort of embraced it, and it was really good. But there was a point which I've spoken about to so many people where, and this is an interesting one, because it ties into goal setting and any, you know, health stuff, training programs, nutrition programs. I have some maybe different views to some people about goal setting and how they should and shouldn't be done. But when you don't have an endpoint in sight, so there was a point in the first lockdown where essentially you weren't given a date when this was ending. It was just, we're not changing the rules, you're still on. And there was a nothingness beyond. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading this book. It's the only book I've read in the last 21 years. Man's Search for Meaning. Have you seen me talk about this? Dr. Frankl, he's a psychiatrist, I think, and a concentration camp survivor. He was in Auschwitz, and he literally talks about this, that one of the reasons it's hard for people in that situation, obviously that's mega extreme, but it's the fact that there's no end point. There's no date that you're aiming towards. Like, you need this, essentially a goal in sight. I mean, it's a horrific place to live. Lockdown for some people is genuinely horrific. I'm not saying it's as bad as Auschwitz, but I think it's difficult to, you know, I know what it's like single parenting. I know what it's like having 2 children. I know what it's like not being able to go and socialise with people. Daddy isn't interesting always. I'm a fun dad, but if it's always me, it's flipping boring for them. And it's stressful for me to try and keep them entertained. So imagine that, but not having the stuff that I have access to, being in a small flat, having more than 2 children, etc., etc. But not having that out point. So that was tough. But at the minute, I'm good. So thank you for asking. And then business-wise, it's funny because online businesses, people are like, oh, online's the future. Oh, Martin, you're lucky. It can't have affected your business. And I'm like, I had a second part of a world tour pretty much sold out that I had to cancel. And, you know, I took what I believe to be the ethical decision just to say, look, everyone, I'm refunding everything because we don't know what's happening next. And, you know, again, lots of our students and mentees were massively affected as you've kind of mentioned, gyms closing. Lots of people that we mentor and study our courses are personal trainers, nutritionists in gyms, and then even just people kind of being made redundant from other jobs or furloughed. And so dealing with all of that, it's been, so when you say, did you get any chance to do any new projects? Not really. And actually our biggest project right now, which is the layperson's course that we're creating, the MN School of Nutrition. It's our professional qualification, is obviously huge and well respected, but my following is that I have a lot of general population followers, and everyone wants the course. So we're trying to create this course and they're like, oh, you must have loads of time to write it now. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm dealing with moving my whole staff to these different back and forward remote working and refunding thousands of tickets and dealing with people who, if they don't get a refund within 5 seconds, they're emailing you going, it's not in my account. I'm like, okay, it will be, just give it a minute. So anyway, it's been up and down, but I'm super happy and I have had time to, a bit bored on evenings, to create a podcast, which is going quite well. So yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think when you were saying there about Zoom meetings and everything, I do find it, I think you've got to have a little bit of lightheartedness, and I think you've got to have a little bit of humour around there. I know, with the meetings that I have with the coaches that I work with, I think, sometimes it can be, we'll rock up, all right, how's everything going? Right, well, it's the same as last week because the gym's still closed.
Yeah.
But, we started doing. So every week, one of the coaches brings. They have to bring a presentation of what they're currently learning.
Oh, cool.
We've got coaches from different backgrounds. A combat and mobility sort of specialist, and a speed coach. So there's all different things that we can, and it makes it a little bit more interesting, and especially when a lot of clients this week have asked, when do you think gyms will be reopening? And the honest answer is, I don't know. Yeah. So just to have these little things that are keeping people interested, I think is sometimes key. And sometimes, equally, you're not always going to have the best day in the world. But yeah, I think a little bit of humour goes a long way sometimes.
Yeah, I have genuinely thought about that. We have a very close team, and so we have lots of our own little in jokes, and it's cool because everyone can kind of join in and make. We've recently, a new employee has joined, and she's just slotted into the team super quick, and because she's like, what did she say? Oh, it's kind of funny actually. Someone had asked me a question on Instagram privately, and I screenshot it and sent it to the team and said, I don't know if our email, because she had asked me something, I said email the team, they'll give you a much better answer, they'll be able to go, I'm typing on my phone, they're on a computer, that's their job to do that, they're amazing, they answer these questions all the time. They can go back and forth, they can send you links, like I'm on a phone, on the move. So I said that, she was like, thanks so much, so she emailed them. Then she came back to me and then asked me another question. And I said, did you email the team? Sort of winky face, because I was sure the team would have told her. And then she was like, yeah, they said this. And I was like, oh. So I screenshot and said, guys, I'm sure you probably did tell her, but we all make mistakes. Can you just double check? And maybe we need to adapt what we're saying, because it clearly wasn't clear to her. Anyway, I actually then went away and muted myself. I think I was doing a story by my window and I heard chatting, and Olivia, who is kind of one of our longest standing, she's like customer relations, marketing executive, administration, she said, oh no, I did say that, this is what I said. And then this new member of staff, she's been here a few weeks, she just goes, maybe she just wanted to slide into Martin's DMs. And I was like, just hilarious. I was just like, well played. Like, it was just funny. It's the kind of comment, it's just nice, isn't it? Being in an environment, I'm kind of proud. I fostered an environment where she can say that in front of all the senior management. She didn't know I was there, but you got Sarah, Billy, Amy, like senior management, all the other members of staff who she's only known for a couple of weeks. Just funny. So I think you're right. Humour, it's good, isn't it? It just diffuses situation. It's like, oh, I'm having a crappy day, but it was nice to laugh. And actually, I do know there are some people who work in kind of mental health services, and they encourage people. And one of my good friends did this for a block of his life. He would wake up, and he had all these routines that was helping him with, essentially depression. And he would watch 15 minutes of comedy, so like, professional comedy, every morning. And I was like, what? Why don't we all do that? Like, imagine waking up every day and laughing for 15 minutes. Like, when I wake up and I have the babies in bed with me and they're doing funny stuff and it makes me laugh, instantly I'm in a better mood. Like, why aren't we all seeking that out first thing in the morning? I mean, you've given me ideas here, actually. I might do a podcast on this.
Well, it is. It's one of those things, and especially saying there about a newer member of staff. We've got some. We obviously we haven't run an intern program at the gym this last year, just because I don't think we could give it enough attention.
Yeah.
But we probably could done with the in and out of lockdowns. But even some of the younger coaches who are interns, who are now like full-time members of staff, they've been presenting and having a little bit of a questioning things, which I think is good. And I think so much benefit, because that's on a complete tangent. When you talk about health, it isn't just the physical side of things; it is the mental side of things, and as well having a little bit of humour. Like one of the biggest things for me is got a little Westie. And she'll run into the bedroom and jump up, and she's just so excited to see everyone all the time, and it's like that must be awesome on a morning, just to be like, oh my god, I'm here.
Life.
Definitely, I completely agree with that. With the for everyone listening who might not know your background, obviously you mentioned a couple of the courses and how you sort of built your staff as well. But for anyone listening who might not know, the content that you put out there, your background sort of in nutrition, in coaching, and sort of how you've done, do you want to give a little bit of a background to yourself?
Yeah, so it's funny, it's like the older I get, the longer my intro becomes. So I'm trying my absolute best to make it short. So my initial career was very performance nutrition based. So I mean, the way I kind of, I guess, got into that was through, I competed in natural bodybuilding for 5 years after snapping my ACL, completely rupturing, and never got it corrected, but ended up weight training, was obsessed with muscles from a very young age, a bit weirdly, and ended up training and then competing in natural bodybuilding. I was terrible at it, but it really got my mind working about nutrition. And then I did my degree and then my master's in sport and exercise nutrition. And that led me to working with, say, British weightlifting, who, I went to 2 Olympic Games, kind of 3 World Championships. That was an amazing part of my career. So interesting. Loved working with the guys. All the big names that people would know that have been our medalists, and also Paralympic powerlifting, which was absolutely fantastic, which is, essentially bench press, seeing the phenomenal feats of strength there and the way athletes train. And then that just expanded when I started my consultancy in 2008, working with then just a variety, started working in professional football, then started gaining kind of individual clients, triathletes, etc. I just love nutrition. I don't really have a specialism. I suppose my specialism has been around body composition originally, which helps because everyone loves body composition, like loves or needs a manipulation of or wants. You work with triathletes who are burning thousands and thousands of calories, but they just want to be 1 pound, 2 pound, 4 pounds, 6 pounds lighter because then my hill climbs and and you've got other people working with them not very well and they're getting lighter, but their power to weight ratio is going down, which it should be going up. So there's no net benefit because they're not understanding a performance mindset of you're just trying to change a variable. You're not looking at the outcome. So we then started applying. I ended up working with some C-list celebrities who released fitness DVDs in the big mass media. And my career kind of took off from a consultancy point of view. And again, the body composition thing came in, weight loss, fat loss. And so then Mac Nutrition, the consultancy, grew and grew. And we started a mentoring program, a weekend mentorship, where lots of the big names in the industry started coming to our mentorship weekend because it just gained this reputation, which is, I was super proud of it. I just love nutrition. So just the chats on those weekends, and I don't know why people have asked me about my sort of critical mindset and exactly how it came about. And I've got different theories and different influences, but the critical mindset from that people were going away with, like no one pays to go on an expensive 2-day event of learning for learning critical thinking. It's like, bothered, give me, cool stuff. But so we never could really sell that, but that's what everyone would come out of that weekend going like, I am so much better than I was before, and I can't even really tell you why. But those people have gone on to be, some of the biggest names in the industry. So, and then people were just desperate for something longer, something long term, and that's where our Mac Nutrition Mentoring Lab was born. So it was the Mac Nutrition Mentorship was the 2-day weekend. That became our now online group that then has various in-person days when we're allowed to outside of pandemics. Yeah. And then Mac Nutrition Uni, which is obviously our 12-month nutrition qualification. And that, I guess, is who I am now to some extent in terms of it went global and kind of a bit mind-blowingly. I guess through just having a long career of, hopefully putting out. One of my best friends said to me the other day, he was like, he's been there since the beginning, and he knows all of the times that I've had chances to sell out and I've been offered big money for different deals and this, that, and the other. I hate business meetings normally because the mindset of other people, and like I said, I'm a control freak, but also a perfectionist, and I'm just not motivated at all by money. So, this layperson's course, we could budget, we could have released it already. It would make loads of money, but I wouldn't be proud of it, so it'd be pointless. I don't have any chance to spend the money, so what's the point? I'm just going to make it really frigging good so I can be happy and proud of it, and then live off the testimonials of people sliding into my DMs going, oh my goodness, it's changed my life. Like, that's the point of it. Yeah. So, we're doing that, and it's going to be great. And then the other side of it is now, because I have a great team, and because I just love interacting with people, we've obviously started doing these in-person talks. So my tour in 2019 was phenomenal. Probably the best experiences of my life, being on stage talking to these hundreds and hundreds of people, audiences, and seeing kind of lives change. My PA, every time we get like a testimonial and it goes, it changed my life. And so now every time she's like looking at any like marketing copy or anything, she's like, let's put it changed my life. And like, I find it so cheesy, right? Like, she's like, no, but Martin, it is life changing. And I'm like, I know, but it just sounds weird. I feel funny saying it. She's like, no, you have to say it. It's the truth. Everyone says it. We'll use their words. But anyway, so in a nutshell, that's kind of what I've done, where I am now.
Oh, yeah. Cool. And was it, because obviously, starting from a performance side of things and having seen, doing the tours and the public speaking that you're doing, was that always something that you wanted to gravitate towards? Because I know, I always like to ask about people's backgrounds and how they progressed through, and whether it was a point of, you just loved and enjoyed what you were doing, and it was just sort of a natural progression to get to that point, or did you always, from the education and from first starting out, did you always want to kind of educate people and do talks? And because I know, from all of the content you put out there, it's actual information that you can take away and be like, all right, okay, so actually I don't have to massively overcomplicate this. It's like actual tools that you can use. Was that always the plan as you sort of progressed?
Yeah, two things to pick up on what you just said, and I'll go for the second one because it's real quick. But what you've said there, I find it a compliment and I appreciate it, in that it's actually a recent change that initially I wanted to be. I value my intelligence. It's part of my, people call about this identity and identity-based behavior change and all this kind of stuff around identity. And it's something that from a very young age, I had my IQ tested. It was very high. My dad was very, very clever. And so it's always been something that I value. And so then growing up, I wanted to be the cleverest person in the room as a kid, and then going into as an adult, and therefore I wanted to be the cleverest person in the industry, and I wanted to be this, that, and the other. And so I read so much, and I knew everything, and I have a very good memory, and so I can talk in certain ways, and I can talk about really in-depth subjects, and I can learn super quick. But there was a point, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where I went, this is literally useless to most people. Like, I can sit in a room with 20 coaches, 20 academics, and enthuse them and teach them new stuff, but what I love is people and helping people, and I had to literally take this moment of, I need to humble myself and not be a world beater. I need to use my skill for teaching and use my skill in public speaking to go, what is actually going to let someone like yourself, but people who aren't even qualified understand it, going all the way back, so that it's actually meaningful and helpful, and they don't need to do a 12-month course to fully get it, and they don't need to pay me to understand it. They just can go to my Instagram, they can go to a one-day talk and just get it and implement it and change. So yeah, I had this thing of talking about the basics, which I know a lot of people still come to me as this, now that I am a industry figure, and I do still battle with putting out the basics, because it's like they know this, and I can do a post and you'll know it, but that post isn't necessarily designed for you. It's designed for a client type person. So going back to, was it a plan? I missed that out in my my background. Is I was a university lecturer, and I actually delivered my first lecture at 21 years of age, only just having finished my degree. Was in the first year of my first postgraduate, and because I didn't actually say that, I did a postgraduate in clinical nutrition later on as well, because of the fact I started working with so many people in the general population, and so many of them had health issues, and I didn't feel comfortable. I was well read, and I wanted to do graduate medicine, but I'm afraid of needles, so I couldn't bring myself to do. I used to watch YouTube videos of people doing like phlebotomy and stuff, and just pass out, and I would then like try and do it again. I could never get over it, and everyone would say to me, "It's different when you're the one doing it," and I was like, "Nah, it's not for me. I'm too terrible with gore." And so I did this clinical nutrition thing to basically just feel, I suppose, like I was doing the right thing by clients if I started to work within the clinical areas. So I was, I gave my first lecture at 21, and I was literally lecturing third year degree students, BSc nutrition, and I was like months ahead of them. And some of them were mature students, so they had like 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 21-year-olds, and I'm still 21. But it was like a 200-seater lecture theatre, and I had just come out of the gym, because actually my first ever lecture I was covering a senior lecturer, and I walked in my gym stuff, drinking a protein shake in front of a 200 lecture theatre, and it was exhilarating. Like, other people would hear that and go, it's my work. Like Sarah, our head of nutrition, she's like, that's my worst nightmare. There are very few things in the world that would be worse for me than being put in that situation. I was like, it's one of the best feelings ever. And so I always knew I wanted to, and I found posts in like 2012 going, I really one day hope that I can just make a career out of just public speaking and educating. That's my flipping Alexa. I should have unplugged that. And then my career took me in a totally different direction, to the point where I have a career, I have a business, and as a hobby, I decided to do a world tour of nutrition talks, and then suddenly went, oh my goodness, like, I've done it. I did what I wanted to do. It's amazing. But I'm actually not doing it as a career. I'm doing it in my spare time, on my weekends. And so, that's kind of the story. I never really pushed the agenda, but because I like public speaking and people enjoy hearing me speak, I would do a talk, and then someone goes, will you come do a talk here? Will you come do a talk here? And then I do a podcast, and someone goes, will you come talk at my gym? And then, will you come over here and speak at this conference in Australia? And it just kind of blows up.
Yeah. I think that it comes across like that you enjoy, and I think you enjoy speaking in public, because I think there's if that comes across in the crowd, you kind of get bought into it a little bit more, and I think you get a lot more information. And we had a little bit of a chat before we started recording of that's why I wanted this podcast to be called Just a Chat, because you end up getting to because I know on social media and everything like that, you only see sort of one element of it, or one element of the person, whereas actually once you start the conversation flowing, you kind of get a better understanding of who they are, what they want to talk about, what are they passionate about, and how they want to put things across. So cool. So we spoke a little bit there, or you touched on about trying to put the information out there that people would be able to use. And I always kind of like to ask questions that are on topic from what people, or what I've had clients with, or other coaches that have spoken to me about clients that are happening now. And obviously during lockdown, the a lot of conversations are, we're not back at normal. So this is an abnormal situation, and that can sometimes relate to people's diet and nutrition as well. But what are your thoughts on what is normal eating? Is it an actual thing? Is there a definition to that? Because is normal to me might not be normal to somebody else, and I think sometimes people can get into a little bit of a rut of that and be like, I'm just going to eat this instead. Then what are kind of your thoughts on that, and what's your sort of definition of it?
Yeah, good question. So I've done 2 or 3 posts recently about normal eating, and it's a funny term. So because normal, it's good that you've said normal for one person is different to normal for someone else, and that's really important when we come up with definitions, for instance. And if you're wanting to come up with an overarching definition, you have to therefore make it very broad, non-specific, so that it does hit most people, other than people who would almost categorically be seen as outside of that, i.e. abnormal. So normal eating we have here in the middle, and then we have at the ends of the spectrum different types of abnormal. So we can define eating disorders, and we can define those each, and on that end of the spectrum where people are extremely physically or mentally or socially impacted by their eating. But normal eating, on the other end, is very difficult to define because it looks so different for different people. And then in the middle, we've got disordered eating. So it's slightly abnormal, but it's not an eating disorder and it's not clinical. So I mentioned in one of the posts, Jake Linarden, who he is in Australia and is an amazing fountain of knowledge around eating disorders. And he pointed me towards this paper. And it was a fascinating read that it essentially talked about the diagnosis and treatment of normal eating. And the author even discusses in this paper, and it's like almost like the OG of papers on this topic. And the author literally, and he's so clever, the author, I loved reading the paper, he was like, it's a paradox, the treatment of normal eating. And what he means by that is we have created societal normal is different from potentially physiological normal. So physiological normal, we are animals, mammals, and we have these drivers that we can't necessarily get away from. But through using our intelligence, quote unquote, because maybe some of that intelligence is maybe actually leading us to having eating disorders and mental issues, we try and do something different to the physiological normal. I have an issue with people who talk about physiological normal as though that's the be-all and end-all of normal. So they're basically going... So you've heard this term diet culture, have you? Yeah. So everyone talks about diet culture. We live in a society of diet culture and fat phobia, etc., which I do believe... Well, I don't believe it's true. We have become very, very centered on body weight and body fatness as literally a marker of someone's social status, whether they're a good or bad person, whether they're lazy or they're not, etc., which is completely wrong. And that is an issue, and I really like the movement towards this. But you also then get people, and a lot of people within that circle, basically talking about physiological normal as, yeah, that's what we should do. But then it's a bit like going, okay, well, what is physiological normal really, and how much does it apply to us in a day and age where... Actually, I saw something funny. Someone was like, it's totally abnormal to eat... you wouldn't find a caveman eating something out of a wrapper. And it's like... Sorry, you're typing on a phone, wearing shoes, living in a house with central heating. Like, you're not a caveman. Like, at what point is that normal and that's okay and that's not? It's ridiculous. But likewise, in the physiological sense, we also have physiological urges that as a... What do we call ourselves? Civilized human beings, whether we are or not. But civilized human being, we don't react to every single physiological cue that we get. I get angry sometimes. I want to punch someone in the face. But do I do it? No, because I'm civilized. Likewise, I also am not a violent person, by the way. I've never punched anyone. But I do have a really short temper. And I get angry, but I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover. But anyway, I'm a baby, really. So... But the point is at some point we live in a modern day society with modern day stuff, and our environment is messed up. We have advertising, we have food scientists whose entire job it is to make us eat stuff that probably, if we eat too much of, is not good for our health. So there has to be an interplay. You know what? This is flipping good content here, I've never said this stuff before. I'm just like, this is class. Thanks very much for your question. But there's an interplay of our environment. Actually, we have to use a level of intelligence or higher thinking that is above and beyond just what physiological normal might be. So people are like, well, you want to eat that food, don't restrict yourself. And there are issues with dieting. There are issues with restricting foods. But I have this saying that lots of people are starting to use that I coined, which is, it's your perception of restriction that dictates its impact. And when you demonize something, you're like, I cannot have it, or that's bad, or if I eat that, I'm a bad person. That leads to a set of behaviors which is probably down a slippery slope. But where you make decisions based on an empowered point of view, it can have a different outcome. And I've seen people who are in this anti-diet movement or this anti-diet culture type thing that essentially said any form of calorie restriction or any form of trying to eat in a specific way that maybe a strength athlete or a bodybuilder or a physique athlete or someone who's just trying to change the way they look, not necessarily hating themselves into change, but I want to do this, therefore that's kind of cool, I'm going to try that. It was like dieting or anything like that is a stressful and demanding endeavor, therefore it's unhealthy. And I was like,
right.
Sorry, so when someone goes, I want to, do a 5K run, I want to, I'm bedbound, I'm an old person and I can't get off from my chair. But do you know what? I'm going to dig deep and I'm going to work with someone and, like the standing and sitting from a seat test that you'll know loads more than me about. I'm going to learn to do this walk. I'm going to do a 5K. I'm going to run a marathon. Don't do that. All these things are physically and stressful, mentally demanding, and they tax you. They're bad for you. It's ridiculous. Like, you can't say that that's an issue. So just such extreme views coming out. So normal eating, we have to then take it back to, for me, the broad overarching definition you can give is when something starts, what's abnormal, and anything that's not abnormal is therefore normal, is when stuff starts to have negative mental, physical, or social impacts on someone, and when those become significant. So I understand when some people start eating healthy, actually their friendship circles might change slightly. If someone stops smoking or regularly binge drinking. I say regularly because I sometimes partake in that. But anything, if someone tries to change something about themselves, things that I wouldn't deem hugely helpful, but of course, no judgment on anyone who does these things. But it's a case of, if you change those things, maybe your friendship groups do change and they do affect you socially, but maybe moving you towards a better path for you if someone wants to do that with their life. So one thing I will say on that is people are often very bad at noticing if something's impacting them negatively socially with regards to their eating. So calorie counting is the poster boy of, or poster thing. You've got to be non-gender specific these days, haven't you? Poster person of non-binary of disordered eating, because people start going, calorie counting will give you an eating disorder. It's like, no, it won't. But it is a risk factor that we need to pay attention to. And people going, I haven't got disordered eating. And it's like, okay, cool. Do you want to go to cinema? No. Oh, I'm really anxious. Oh, I don't know if I'll be able to. Can I weigh the popcorn? This, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, you're not normal. And all their friends might see that, but they might not. So as practitioners, often that's our job to be able to spot that and very, very gently start broaching that issue. So normal eating is tricky to fully define it, but I said stuff like eating when you're happy is normal. Eating when you're sad and wanting to eat when you're sad is also normal. People go, oh, you shouldn't eat when you're sad, that's bad. And it's like, well, actually, it's not. We have physiological normal drives in that sense. The problem is if you eat and then you hate yourself for eating and you have guilt over eating and you're eating to punish yourself and you're eating until you're sick or whatever. Those things are things we want to address and change. But normal eating is, eating when you're sad or happy. Both of those things are normal. Eating less on one day and more on another, that's also normal. Again, people going, no, you need to eat consistently. You need to eat 6 meals every day. Or normal is breakfast, lunch and dinner and this, that. No, it's not. Normal is actually when you can just eat. I do think a variety of foods is normal. Some people need to or want to restrict, happy days. But when people start going away from normal, it's when they start, say, demonizing a food. I can't eat this. That becomes abnormal. And that is a very common thing in this day and age for whatever reason.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when you're talking about there about food, and the last little bit you mentioned was, I want to eat when I'm happy, I'm eating when I'm sad. And I actually had a conversation with a client about this either this week or last week. If it's someone's birthday, it's sometimes surrounded by food. It's, there's a meal sometimes usually involved in there. Christmas, there's a meal, it's centered around a meal. Like, you're not going to not have a Christmas dinner, or you're not going to go have food around your birthday. It's like that would be, a normal thing to do. It's there to be enjoyed. It's a social occasion. But you don't have to be thinking that, oh well, I'm not going to have any cake on my birthday or anything like that. It's realistically, you're not going to cause as much damage as what probably people think they do, because you're probably going to feel worse by not celebrating that and enjoying that sort of event, rather than restricting yourself from there. And when you mentioned about sort of the diet culture or people anti-diet, there's a lot of people that have come to work with coaches or nutritionists, or have done 14 different types of diets in the past. Right. Well, why have you ended up doing so many diets? Do you think there is a culture of people are looking for a diet so that they can attach themselves to be right? This is something normal. This is my normal eating now, and be attached to that, rather than finding something that just works for them. That kind of makes sense. Do you think sometimes people want to attach themselves to that? Oh, right, so I'm doing keto. This is my normal. Well, actually, something else would probably work a little bit better for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think belonging is a huge draw to any diet. I want to use the word religion, but diet modality. But it becomes a religion. It becomes a community. And actually, I think that's a really powerful thing to say out loud for people to hear, is convincing someone that their dietary pattern, their modality, or their dietary religion, we can call it in many instances, is not optimal or is not necessary. It may be working, but it may not be necessary. We know the insulin hypothesis has been fairly well debunked, but convincing them to move away from that because maybe their eating's become disordered, or it's affecting them socially, you're actually asking them to give up friendships, or give up being part of a community, or give up a sense of belonging to something. So you're not actually, I talk about this, and actually your question has added another thing to my answer in this realm, is of no amount of science is going to convince someone that their personal life experience is wrong or incorrect or didn't happen. It happened to me. I felt it. You can't give me any of your fancy mumbo jumbo about insulin that's going to convince me that when I cut carbs, I didn't lose weight, because I did, and I felt it, and I actually felt good. So there's a discussion around that of going, I understand it did happen. I'm just trying to explain to you why it happened, and also that it could happen in these other ways. But you can't out-science someone's life experience, their kind of often religious-esque epiphany about nutrition. But you're also saying they stop doing keto, and suddenly all their friends or everyone on a forum or in a Facebook group who they've actually come to quite like as human beings, they're not going to be part of that hardcore crew. And it's why things like CrossFit take off, and all of this kind of jazz, the paleo movement and that kind of stuff. So there is that sense. The other thing is that you're talking about flexibility and what you said about finding what works for them. And normal eating is defined. So that paper, I think the author's, it's like Polvy or Polivy or something. He literally says a normal diet is one that is flexible and adaptable to situations. And for me, that's why most people fail, is because they don't have that flexibility. So you mentioned, even if people are caveman, oh, how did the caveman eat? Caveman feasted. If they had a kill, I'm saying that like I was there, but as far as I'm told by all of these gurus, they would have a kill. They would find some stuff. Like, you can even find modern day hunter-gatherers and ancestral communities who they find a beehive, and they'll climb trees and they'll just basically gorge on sugar, on the honey. And so, what's normal? Is that normal? Is that abnormal? It's physiological. It's normal. They find this thing. They want to eat it. There's scarcity. We just sadly don't live with as much scarcity as maybe we would be better physically suited to. But so therefore, having a celebration at Christmas or whatever, and being flexible in that and not restricting yourself, probably is arguably very normal to celebrate around with food as a centerpiece. And what we know is, and is fairly consistent, and I want the evidence-based community who are seeing this anti-diet culture and this that-esque area to understand that they need to update their knowledge. And maybe, because I didn't know this in my 20s, I didn't know this when I first started working with people, I didn't have a strong grasp on this, that restrained eaters and dieters will overeat much more than non-dieters when faced with something that is outside of their paradigm, out of their norm, when they're knocked off kilter. And what knocks you off kilter? Life. And I talked about this in my tour in 2019 of life will happen. And very often, I've had so many people now, we're now in 2021, people leaving my tour, and I gave kind of a bit of a script, not a script, but a framework for, if this is you, do not leave my talk and diet. Go and seek counselling or some sort of therapy. And I've had these people who have gone and got the therapy, done what I said, and even then worked with their therapist. I've got one person, I actually want to do a podcast with her because she's such a success, and her therapist is an absolute boss. And I hope that I'll get to find out who that therapist is one day and sort of talk to her and thank her and maybe chat to her about what she did, because it's exactly what I would do, which sounds a bit self-serving, but she didn't want this woman to diet. She said, no, we've fixed you a bit, but you're just going to undo it. And this woman said, well, I'm going to, but I would like you to help me on that journey and do it right, and not and also hold me accountable if I fall back into bad habits. And she's like 50 kilos down, and it's like unbelievable. But I'm so proud of her that she actually listened to me. Do not flip in diet. Go and seek this area. So we know that life will happen, stress will happen. I think even in the Polvey paper, he talks about intoxication. Like someone has a beer, someone has a glass of wine, and that's me. I am going to eat significantly more calories than someone who wasn't dieting. I'm stressed, I'm going to eat significantly more calories than someone's not dieting, etc., etc. So I've tried to talk about binge eating a great deal, because if someone has binging tendencies or episodes, they literally can undermine weeks of what they would term positive work. And I will hold my hands up and embarrassingly say that I have said words to the extent of, you had a bit of a binge this weekend. Okay, well, no worries. Let's just get back on the wagon and just, I'll encourage you a bit more. Let's just try not to do that this week, whatever. And I think if people are honest with themselves, I would guess 97% of coaches over the age of 18 who have worked with people have probably said something similar. And they're not saying it horribly. They're not saying it. We all mean well when we say it, but it's at 21, at 23, when I said these sorts of things, I had no clue that maybe that one-off binge would then become a slightly more regular binge, and this, that, and the other. And I don't have any, really shocking, terrible testimonials to give. But I would find it harder to talk about them if I did. But where someone went into a disordered eating pattern, an eating disorder, but I was disordered eating 100% from my bodybuilding career, which I've spoken about plenty of times. But it's this binging thing of, you can undermine so much, and therefore it's not just. With regards to your question, when you sent it to me on email about one of them, I didn't really know what I was going to say, but I literally just wrote down, people think try harder, not smarter. They think they need more of a plan and be more strict. And that's often what people do not need. They don't need a plan. They don't need to be more strict. They don't need to try harder. They need to be reflective. Why didn't previous stuff work? And what needs to change for this actually to be something that might be a bit more consistent and would actually work this time?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's whenever you have a plan and something like that happens, let's just keep sticking to the plan. Let's just keep going. Whereas
it's my fault.
Yes. I think sometimes one of the biggest things that I found, over the last year of lockdown is, having more conversations with clients and getting them to asking the question, well, what do you think? What do you think has gone wrong? And exactly like what you say, I think that's a good way of looking at it, being a little bit more reflective and be like, okay, so let's learn from this then. How can we improve from there? And if we can't do plan A, which is optimal, right, let's try plan B, C, D. Let's just give these a go, and then everything can be a little bit scalable. I think there is. I know a lot of clients that I work with like having that structure and that plan in place, and I think sometimes you have to say, look, this can be adjustable. It isn't just this way or no way at all. But yeah, I think that was a good way of looking at it, being a little bit more reflective rather than being, actually it's gonna spiral out to do more episodes later down the line. One of the things when we're talking about food is that and nutrition is that sometimes people think that they need to start something fresh completely, and just everything that they're doing now must be bad because I've seen this diet or I've seen this and I must be doing this. How do you kind of put it across with clients or people that you work with or in your talks of looking for areas of opportunity that you can actually build on? So not throwing everything out of the kitchen sink. What are you currently doing now, and how can we improve on that? Because I think sometimes that's where people struggle in a starting point of, I feel overweight, so therefore I need to start something new. Whereas actually, what are you currently doing? How can we get you progressing? That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and what you just said there, it doesn't. What's popped into my head doesn't fully relate, but I'm just going to say it to begin with because it's something interesting for people. Is people talk? There's this term habit stacking. Have you heard of habit stacking?
Yeah, that's Atomic Habits? Is that?
Yeah. James Clear talks about that. Yeah, I didn't know it was him that it originated from. Just everyone's talking about habit stacking, and exactly that of. And in fact, I think when I first heard it was Dr. Rob Young. But anyway, the point being, it isn't habit stacking I'm talking about, but people already have a structure of their life, which clearly they've fallen into through many data points, instances, lifestyle things that have led them to having these habits, whatever they may be. Skipping breakfast, not skipping breakfast, having this set number of meals, eating at these times of day. Clearly what they're currently doing is how they naturally fall. And therefore, if you can build a framework on top of that, it's a lot easier than fully changing stuff. So often it's like, I want you to change this, I want you to change that. And all that does is it taxes resources that people have. So it's not habit stacking, but it's like, right, you tend to eat at this time, and this is that time in relation to, say, an exercise session or not, or bedtime or waking. And how can we improve those instances? And so often, like in research, it brings me to like papers like, I can't remember the author. It's an old paper. It's not an author that anyone would have heard of, I doubt, because I can't remember his name. But essentially, just giving, I think it was something weird, 48 grams of whey protein, right? And that's all they did in the study, nothing else. And so not like started an exercise program, not started eating better. Like they literally were looking at almost like this intervention of giving this. But what that did was changed big marker endpoints, changed body composition, changed 24-hour energy intake. There's no download MyFitnessPal, start meal prepping, buy some Tupperware, blah, blah, blah. Just drink this chocolate milkshake and do nothing else. Like my whey protein is choc nut flavored, and I've been drinking it for, people go, oh, protein shakes, they're bad or this, that. It's like Little Miss Muffet's not a tough curds and whey. Like she was having it. She wasn't a part of diet culture. She wasn't flipping dying of heart disease. She wasn't whatever, right? She was just chilling on her tuffet, drinking, having some curds and whey. But hers probably tasted rank. Mine tastes of choc nut. It's delightful, right? My babies love it. Like I try not to give it to them because I'm like, it's mine. Get off. Get your own. Buy your own. Do some chores. I'll give you some money to buy some. This is expensive. But I'll pour some in their cups. They flip and love it. It tastes great. So saying to someone, again, people see nutrition as restriction. And I still remember, and this is something, I'm proud of very, very little in my early career, if I'm frank. But no, not really. But it's just like, you say some dumb stuff, don't you? But one of the things I said is focus on what you can do, not what you shouldn't do. So what can I do? What can I add in? Because taking away is just always this negative thing of like, right, if I'm going to have to restrict calories, I don't want to be restricting anything else. So, whether or not you're going to do that, because again, I talked a lot about this spontaneous calorie reduction, which is what happens when you have 48 grams of weight in the morning, spontaneous calorie reduction, so that 24-hour energy intake reduces. But what are you doing? Drink a chocolate milkshake and it tastes delightful. So when we talk about what are they already doing, it's what are they doing and when are they eating and what's their current habits and how can I improve that? Can I just go, do you like these foods? Yeah, I like that food. Why don't you eat it? I don't know, I've just never thought to. Cool, add in some of this. I'd never thought of that. That's an amazing idea. One thing that people started calling me the legume guy at one point, and it's not sexy. I don't want to be the legume guy, right? So please don't call me it. But I just banging on about legumes because for me, it's such a part of the Western diet. That's a dirty term in nutrition science, traditional Western diet, because it's just crap. But legumes, we don't consume enough of them. And therefore, how can legumes are nice if you have them prepared in a certain way. Like I literally bought some yesterday because I thought I haven't been eating enough legumes. And it's like what was it, Sainsbury's or Tesco, something, I can't remember what shop I was in, but it was like a 5 bean mix. And it's essentially baked beans, Heinz baked beans, but a cheaper version, and it's got lots of different legumes, 5 different beans, and seeking out those things, because what we now are starting to understand about gut health, it's an area that's just only going to explode, but it's one of those areas we know that they're satiating, we know they contain different fibers that are promoting this gut diversity, for instance, which then might have this gut-brain axis impact that impacts all sorts of things, our mental health, our appetite, which, just is wide-ranging, our metabolic health. And so what can you do? Right, do you like legumes? No, I don't. Okay, let's look at some other foods that you can have that aren't going to massively change stuff. People focus on dumb things like, you shouldn't be having rice. It's like, man, rice is the least of your issues. I'm eating too much potato. It's the least of your issues. And even government guidelines and dietetic guidelines are ridiculous. Eat less of this. What impact's that going to have on me? Virtually nothing. Well, that's a load of effort. No, don't do that. Don't try and make someone healthy don't add some salt to your food. Ridiculous. Maybe let's try and tackle something bigger, like the fact that you're eating McDonald's for 2 of your meals a day. Can we maybe look at a better option for McDonald's? Or ideally, can we look at a meal prep company? Or can we, I don't know, be crazy and prep some food ourselves? There's so much stuff that you can have these big wins, but people just go, right, I am doing carnivore, keto, or any of the, the diet clubs, which don't foster empowered mentalities because they want you to fail to make them money, or they don't want you to fail, but they're not going to give you the keys to do it yourself because they are 100% about profit. So, I don't know if you saw it, but the ex-Weight Watchers CEO said on, I think it was maybe BBC Panorama, he literally went, we know people fail, it's the business model. And he's like about 85 years old now, and he basically doesn't give a what he says, and he just said it, and it's like, wow, he's just admitted it, and the NHS is funding people to go on this. It's disgusting, really.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think you said there, looking at maybe addressing some big rocks, and then you mentioned, oh, well, I want to do a carnivore diet. I think people are looking at the end product and working their way down, rather than actually, right, what are the big rocks that we can hit off here? And it seems to be, I lie in bed sort of having the phrase going around my head. I think I said it that many times. Just low hanging fruit, just the things that, you can pick off that easily. And we chatted a little bit out at the start as though, we talk about the basics and telling people, these are what we want to do, and it's nothing like what you mentioned there. Right, you're having McDonald's for two meals of your day. Can we have an alternative? Can we have a meal prep? And there's people can pick up the meals from the gym, and had the conversation of, all right, well, I'm really, really busy, so I end up just grabbing a sandwich or ordering something off Deliveroo. Right, well, what about if you have this meal? It's got a protein, a veggie, a little bit of carb in. You can get extra protein if you want, or play around with it. That's something a little bit easier there, and it's taken out that thought process of, oh, right, well, I need to think about having this, or just having, right, can we drink a little bit? Can we drink a little bit more water? Can we work on things? It doesn't always have to be something. Drinking, I don't know, beetroot juice with a hint of lettuce extract or something like that. That's got to be like this crazy thing that actually sometimes we can just start from here, and then you can progress and change things up from there. And that kind of goes on to the sort of the next question that I wanted to ask about is, when it comes to actual, and you mentioned about normal eating being different ends of the spectrum. There's could be under eating or binge eating at either end. But also when people, because you mentioned about a lot of people are sort of fascinated about body composition, wanting to lose weight, and there's kind of a room of thought that you need to do a sustainable fat loss, slow and steady, which a lot of people have done. But also there's the other side of it that people will say, no, well, we can drop a lot of weight, and that's still not a negative thing. I think people are kind of still sort of stuck in both camps over what is good, especially when they're looking to drop weight. Do you just kind of want to chat about both, and why it's always necessarily a bad thing if we are dropping weight? Because the worst thing would be, just touching on that, is if people are dropping weight, is if they gain that weight back afterwards. I think it's maintaining that weight when they've dropped that. Do you want to give sort of your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I was just trying to connect something you said earlier, because it fits in really nicely. I think one reason that people often want a set plan is because their mental resources are taxed to the point where they need something that they can just hold on to, and someone's almost got the reins. And if I just follow I did this post on Instagram, I was going to say funny post, but that's subjective. I found it very funny, many others did, but about the C diet. Any food that begins with C, you can't eat it, which is most diets are similar. They just make some random rule that's going to make you have to not eat certain foods, which puts you in a calorie deficit. But they don't, and that's, if you don't have the mental capacity, emotional capacity to take a step back and look at which parts of your life can you adapt and construct a new framework to move forward, and you have to just jump in all in, right, get rid of everything out of my cupboards, only put these shakes in there, and this is my new life. It's like you will 100% fail. Whether it's now or whether you'll get results and then fail and gain it back, you will categorically. And someone will call me out for this and go, I'm 12 months post, herbicide diet, and it's like, cool, come back in 2 years, come back in 3. You're not like, and if you do succeed, absolutely fantastic, brilliant, you're an anomaly, but you won't. But if you do, you're an anomaly, but you won't. You definitely won't. Anyway, let me carry on. It's this thing of, okay, are you in a place where you are in control of your habits and your environment and this, that, and the other. If you are currently going through a breakup and you are mentally stressed and you're sad and you're crying and this, that, and the other, don't start a diet because it's just going to tax you further. Unless you're, going through a breakup and you're crying and you're like, I want to do this and I've got loads of spare time now and I'm going to spend loads of time reading and educating and being reflective and listening to evidence-based practice. Fine, great. But if you are mentally taxed and you're just like, oh, I hate myself, I hate this situation, whatever. Or if you're going through a stressful period, you're going through a pandemic and you're not coping well. Some people have flipping coped amazingly. My best friend was like, I don't know what the fuss is about. I'm fine. I was like, yeah, you're not normal. I'm like, and the good thing, the reason I like him, the reason we're such good friends is because he said, I've had the realization that actually the way it's impacted me isn't the way it's impacted many others, and therefore I'm fine. And I'm sitting there going, I don't really get the fuss. And he's like, I do get the fuss, actually. It's just not the fuss for me. I'm fine. But, going through a pandemic, do they want to do this? So moving on to what you've said there is, once you've got control, once you are able to start something and form some habits that look like the way you want to live long term. I have obviously recently been doing some aggressive diets, or, I've done a couple of aggressive diets, but over the last, whatever it's been, 3 years, 4 years, I first started talking about aggressive diets in 2015 when I was challenged to speak to a very large audience of very good evidence-based, or mostly evidence-based personal trainers, nutritionists. And when I speak, I put my all into speaking. My worst nightmare is someone leaving my talks and going, I learned nothing, or I wasn't interested, or you've just told me the exact same thing that I already knew. So, and I there's always something I can probably educate people on, even if it's just a snippet. And one thing that I saw, so I kind of studied this group of individuals online and saw that they were very, very anti anything other than slow weight loss, fat loss. Right. And zealot, anything other than slow is bad. And you can understand the echo chamber. Every time I talk about increasing calorie deficit above 500, 1,000 calorie deficit, a 1,500 calorie deficit, a 2,000 calorie deficit, people go mad. And I'm like, why not? And like, well, because they'll regain their weight. And I'm like, okay, cool. Based on what? Well, everyone knows. And as soon as it's like, oh, everyone knows. No, everyone knows. Everyone knows what? Find me a paper that shows it. Oh, I can't. Exactly. And the problem is like we see these crappy shake diets and whatever else you want to call it, and we think all rapid fat loss protocols look like that and have the same outcomes and the lack of behavior change and whatever. But then we look at the evidence, and the evidence shows. And what's funny is I couldn't do that. I'd be starving hungry. And I'm like, if I do a 500 calorie deficit, I'm starving hungry. If I do if I eat 900 calories a day as a male who weighs between 80 and 95 kilos, depending on where I am in my life and how I've been eating, whether I've been bulking or sulking or not training or whatever, 900 calories. People are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, and weight training on the same day. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, and I have no hunger. What? Yeah, try it. And it's like, okay, but that's an n equals 1. It's not an n equals 1. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of data points of people doing very low energy diets and hunger being switched off. And why that is, there's not lots of theories. I have theories, which would take a bit too long to explain. But the most simple one to explain is ketosis. And we understand that you don't have to do a keto diet to get into ketosis. And we see blood levels of ketones increase on these very low energy diets. And the impact of it is you do the fat loss bit and it gets over and done with quickly. And you're less hungry. Being not hungry on a diet is flipping class. And also getting on the scales and seeing them go down. And I've actually got a talk on this with all of the research. For any, if anyone's listening, this is going to sound like I'm selling something here, but it's I have this talk that I delivered back, I can't remember when, but it was at a fat loss conference, and Spencer Nadolski talked on some amazing stuff, and I did this thing on essentially rapid fat loss, evidence-based rapid fat loss protocols, and loads of people have watched it, and it's like £45 on my website. But I literally in the last month or so have been talking, because I've been talking so much about this, and people are like, can you tell us all the references? Can you talk more about it? And I've spoken for free about it on different podcasts, but I have this talk with slides and everything, and but it's like 45 quid. And I've just been thinking, I don't know if you saw, but I sold my PCOS lecture, which again is like a really good piece of work, which was £45 for a charity thing. And I've been thinking whether or not it would be a charity thing, or just, give it away for £10, my talk, just like a nominal fee, which is, because I feel like if I give it away for free, people just go, nah, it's worthless. Yeah. And I'm like, no, loads of people have spent 45 quid on my PCOS talk, and it changed their lives, and it's amazing. And people are like, I would have bought it 10 times over what it's done. So then when you go, okay, well, it's a tenner, people are like, okay, cool, I'm still paying. They actually bother to listen. Like, I bet if people listen to loads of your podcasts, they'd learn loads, but it's like, oh, it's free, it can't be that good. I hate that mentality. I'm probably the same myself. But unfortunately, you do. Lots of stuff online that's free is rubbish. Lots of the stuff I get on in the business world, in the marketing world, come to my free webinar. It's flipping rubbish, because they are all about business and money rather than health and helping people. But anyway, so this rapid fat loss stuff, I obviously can't go into the details that some people, they hear it and it blows their mind. But maybe I'll send you a link and you put it in the show notes if I do that, and people can go and research it more. But it's this myth of you will regain all of the weight. It doesn't work like that. I even see people going, you'll lose muscle. Not necessarily the case. I think with people who are athletes or already very lean, or are more interested in their strength and their performance, you do have to be careful, because for me it's like, you need to drop training volume. You need to actually not push into any form of overreaching realm. You're really just ticking over, but you get the fat loss done really quick, and you can still lift 5 rep max stuff, and maybe you're definitely not PBing, but it doesn't impact you that much. You have your flipping can of Monster, or your pre-workout, whatever, do your normal routine, and you bunch calories around that kind of session. But we're not doing the Tour de France here. We're not running marathons. We're lifting weights, and it doesn't require that much glucose, glycogen, energy really to do our sessions if you're in that realm. CrossFitters, don't do it, it's silly. Use your flipping CrossFit to get the body fat down, not a very low energy diet. But have I answered your question? Sorry, I sort of just rambled a bit.
Yeah, I think with that, when you're saying there that people can do a low calorie or an aggressive deficit, I think as soon as, for me, when everyone ends up, and I said it in the start of the question, there is that thought process that you're going to be in a calorie deficit, and you're going to lose weight. But if you do it too quickly, then you're going to rebound a little bit. And as soon as you say, because there's a calorie deficit, so a couple of calories lower, that's all right. Yeah. Whereas when you say, right, okay, how much time? Because you mentioned it there, if you're going to start a diet, you don't need to do it when things are really stressful, or if you can't commit to it. How long can you commit to it for? Okay, 4 weeks. Right, now we're going to do an aggressive calorie deficit. An aggressive calorie deficit? I think that sometimes people can get a little bit carried away from it, but it's how, like with anything, I think it's how you it's how things are done and followed up properly. And you know, I said there about in one of the last questions that we were talking about right, well, I'm only going to drink beetroot juice and the essence of lettuce. Yeah, if you're having that, you're going to be feeling tired. You're going to, you know, potentially lose muscle. You're not going to. But you know, like what you said there, right? Well, I'm still doing weight training. I'm on 900 calories a day. I'm still feeling good. You know, and I'm not feeling hungry. In terms of the, you know, he said there, if you are doing a London Marathon or the Tour de France, right, that's going to be a little bit of
totally different scenario
to work with. But you know, for the majority of people who are listening, you know, when we first chatted before we started recording, you know, a lot of people are into the lifting, into the weight training side of things, and you know, kind of coming full circle around everything with, you know, what's normal eating, you know, what are bad practices, and where people are struggle. I don't think it has to be you know, some outlandish crazy theory that people have to follow, and I don't think people, the biggest thing that I've kind of taken from especially on the last bit that you said there, when people say, oh well, they're going to rebound the weight, or you know, we're going to have 1,000 calorie deficit, why not? You know, because the for me, if you try it and then, right, I feel shocking, I feel rubbish, right, well, you don't have to still continue doing that. We're not going to be like,
be reflective.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, oh no, we've still got 8 weeks left of this, so buckle in. This is going to be where it's going to, which, you know, as soon as you got back to me, I was kind of looking forward to, you know, picking your brains and having these conversations, because I'm not the, you know, my area is the powerlifting, the strength training, the muscle building. However, especially over the course of the last year, we've spoken about the habits and goal setting, and the focus has shifted a little bit, because, you know, I'm not tracking people's deadlifts or squats or how much volume of training they're doing. A lot of it is their nutrition, their habits, how they're feeling, you know, what's heading in the right direction. And I think, you know, it's a good string to your bow to have that as a coach. And you know, you mentioned it there, that, you know, these tools that you're giving out there is enough for people to understand, especially, you know, for the majority of the general population to be like, okay, so actually I'm not doing something, you know, crazy wrong, and I'm, you know, this is normal. I can still work from this, because I think there are still quite a lot of myths around there, and sometimes people are sometimes a little bit confused about things, which leads it to the final question, which I like to ask. From everything that we've chatted about there, and for everyone listening, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
Oh, wow, goodness. Put me on the spot. Okay. I mean, I've said there about being reflective, right? And it's also, if you're going to do something, and maybe this is just because it's on my mind a little bit, is because I've done a post today on Instagram, and the level of stupidity is literally painful. And people have messaged me like, oh, yeah, so-and-so stupid. I'm like, no, I didn't mean her. She's actually asked me an intelligent question and challenged me. It's the people who are supposedly on my side who literally haven't got a freaking clue, but they're just joining in. And it's like, no, I'm not even going to like your comment because you're dumb. Because you're just going, no, that's not the case. And it's like, people need to have, the best thing I think a lot of us can do in life is learn to listen rather than just having our own biases. But try and prove yourself wrong. Like, if you say something, and this is that critical mindset that people do praise me for, is you say something, back it up. What are you backing it up with? So if someone goes, if you lose weight quickly, you'll put it all back on. Okay, back it up. What are you backing that up on? And the thing you can't do is use N=1 experiences, because that doesn't matter. Like, there are people on this planet who go, I have seen aliens, I have seen whatever, Jesus in my toast, I have seen whatever, the world is flat. They don't count. No individual counts. Science really is the only thing that counts. If you want to talk about faith stuff, fine, you can go and just go like, I believe the earth is flat. Cool, happy days, you know. But if we're going to have a discussion, try and prove yourself wrong. Okay, right, I think that happens. Why do I think that would happen? Well, I think rapid dieting crashes your metabolism. Brilliant, good theory. Go and find studies. Okay, oh look, the studies have been done. They don't crash your metabolism. Right, I was wrong on that. Fantastic. You lose loads of muscle. Oh my goodness, doesn't seem to happen. Fantastic. You store more fat afterwards. Oh my goodness, doesn't seem to happen. Etc., etc. Then coming back to that understanding of, well, why have I observed this happening? Oh, people are binging. Right, it causes you to binge. Let me go and find research on that. Oh no, that doesn't seem to happen. Why does it happen? The perception of restriction. So then it's like, well, how can I undermine that? By doing a flexible, aggressive diet. And that's why I've done lots of my podcasts. And if people do want to learn more, obviously, hop over to my podcast. I've done several episodes. I'm trying to build this stuff up because no one's putting out content on this in the fitness world. But understanding that what I talk about, these multiphasic and multifaceted diets, so that you go in and then you have a social occasion, we come out, we go back to maintenance, whatever, and it's that thing of being reflective. So I'm going to question myself and I'm going to be reflective. Right, I've done a day of it. Actually, let me just double check this. I told you it didn't work. Straight away, arrogance, you're not going to learn. Like, if you don't want to learn, don't even bother. Don't even enter the conversation. Oh, look, Martin spoke on his podcast. A day isn't long enough to get these reductions in hunger. And this is often why I start my aggressive diets with a 24, 36 hour fast, because I start the day of 900 and I'm like, happy days. I even said to Sarah, our head of nutrition, I actually think I could tell the point where I got into ketosis or whatever happens with it, because it was the hardest fast I've ever done. I've only ever done 3 or 4 in my whole life, and it's only one day. But this was the hardest one for some reason. I don't know if it was because of my habits that day or the situation I was in, I just don't know. But I literally hit this point where I was like, oh, yeah, hunger has literally gone, and it never came back. And so being reflective and understanding that, other times it might take you 1 or 2 or 3 days for that to happen. So my take home is like, get educated, get over yourself, learn to listen. You can learn something from anyone, whether they're more intelligent or less intelligent than you, whether they know more than you or less than you. Can learn from their mistakes, be reflective. And honestly, my self-serving answer to that, which I'm going to take from Billy, because he said, when people ask you similar questions, I think like Danny Lennon has asked me probably 4 times when I've been on his podcast, what thing can you make your life better? And Billy just goes, why don't you just go listen to my podcast? Because I sort of feel like that. It's like, well, if you want to learn about nutrition, I'm relatively good at nutrition and it's free. Go and listen to it. If you genuinely want to change your life, go and listen to my podcast. So those are my kind of things. Be reflective, have a critical mindset, try and prove yourself wrong. And go and listen to my podcast.
Absolutely. I kind of felt like, we could have gone down rabbit holes and a lot of different things there. Really, really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thanks so much.
I really enjoyed it. Really thankful that you took the time to, jump on. For everyone, and I think that that was some great words of wisdom to finish off on there. But for everyone listening who might want to see your content, go to check out your podcast, see your courses, or just see the work that you do. Where can people find you and see your podcast and the content that you're putting out there?
Yeah, so my website's martin-macdonald.com, MAC, not the same as McDonald's, pet hate of mine. And so that, you can go there and find all of my guest appearances. So for instance, this podcast will, I'll link back to your podcast I've got like a whole page of all my previous guest appearances. And then I've now got my podcast on there, which is called Not Another Nutrition Podcast. I'm very proud of the name. And then really, I guess, my Instagram, I'm regularly there. I did a bit of a rant on my podcast recently, just basically going, stop following idiots on Instagram. Stop wasting your time, like following people on reality TV shows. Like, consume my boring content and change your life. I just went off on one. I didn't mean to, but I just had this thing of like, go and do it. Like my Instagram, I'm posting there regularly. It's good, but and read the flipping caption. rather than, people don't read the caption. Like, I think that's one of the issues with people commenting today. They've just seen the title of the video and commented. It's like, read the flipping caption. But yeah, that's where they can find me. Pretty much Instagram and my website.
Awesome. For everyone listening, if you haven't seen the content and everything that Martin's been putting out there, you're missing out. Go and find what he's doing. I know, from following his content for so long now, I've said before, it's tools that you can use, and there is the more in-depth information there if you want to learn that as well and get a little bit more of a better understanding, which is really beneficial as well. So thanks again, Martin, for taking the time to jump on. Thanks again for everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
Thanks very much. See you later.